Did that work?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. As Julie so nicely put it, my name is Kirsten, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with me and with some of my work that I've done up there already. Today, I'm going to speak to you about attracting birds into the garden. And as you can see, somebody decided to join us. So excuse me if he makes a noise because he loves to compete when I'm talking. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I would like to share. And let me see if I can get this working. All right. Can everybody see that okay? Julie, if you could give me a thumbs up. Awesome. Okay. All
yes.
Right. So this is the first time I've ever done this, so excuse me. So what we're talking about today is attracting birds into the garden, and by planting certain native plants, you can do this very easily. There are certain standards that'll attract birds, and they don't only need places to hide and to nest, they also need food sources and water sources and nesting areas. So hopefully today I'll be able to give you some of those ideas on my very simple PowerPoint. So let's begin. Of course, we all want to attract the hummingbird into our gardens here in Florida. And I don't know about anybody else. I lived in California and I used to have hummingbirds fighting over hummingbird feeders. Here in Florida, it's a little different, but we definitely have hummingbirds coming into the garden. And there are, I always say, 3 plants that you can plant to attract hummingbirds. This picture is, of course, the coral honeysuckle. That's one of them. Another one, of course, is the firebush. We have the compact and the regular, but those will definitely bring the hummingbirds. And that's, so of course, how do we attract them? We have to create a habitat. They need, as I said before, a food source, they need a water source, and they need a place to hide or to nest. Just a quick FYI, the photos that are on this PowerPoint are all photos that I've taken over the years in my own garden or at clients' gardens. So everything that you see here is what you would attract if you plant some of the natives. Let's see. So of course, food sources. Now, of course, if you plant some of the natives, you're going to have a nectar source. Which will attract insects and caterpillars and butterflies. The butterflies, of course, will attract the birds because the birds will eat some of the caterpillars. And it'll also attract the birds because of having insects in the garden. And of course, you need berries. Different birds use different berries throughout the season. So here we have the firebush on the left-hand side with a very busy bumblebee. Of course, we have the oaks in the middle and then the beautyberry. Now, of course, this time of the year, the beautyberry are beautiful. The birds are all busy feasting on them now. And of course, I'm sure you all know we can eat the berries from that too. They don't taste great and they're full of seeds, but that's just a fun fact about them. And those are 3 very important plants. Our oak trees are exceptionally important. They are a host to a lot of Lepidoptera, which are butterflies and moths. They are actually one of the most important trees. So, when people say they want to cut down an oak tree because it's messy, I just tell them the fact that there are an awful lot, I think it's 455 species of butterflies and moths that use an oak tree, just one oak tree. So you can imagine the amount of birds you're going to be feeding from one oak tree. This is just a list of some of the basic ones to have in your garden. Of course, up in the villages, I know that you guys don't have some people don't have large gardens there, but even just planting 1 or 2 of them is amazing how much habitat you can create. One of my absolute favorites is the second one down, which is Simpson stoppers. I love Simpson stoppers for so many reasons, one of them being the scented flowers in the springtime. I've counted between 15 and 17 species of insect using those flowers in the springtime. Not only that, the smell is amazing. So always plant it near a window or somewhere where you can benefit from smelling it, or near a patio. They also have wonderful berries for the birds, which usually ripen around about usually middle summertime, and they're also edible. They do have a little kick of pepper, and don't eat too many of them because that's why they're called stoppers. They'll do something. A couple of, and here's Mr. Rodney. A couple of others that I would like to mention. Another one that's an important one is wild coffee. And as Julie says, somebody has some wild coffee for people. wild coffee is a very important next plant in the early spring. And then it has berries. This time of the year, they're starting to turn black. And the most amazing thing is you watch the wild coffee. As soon as those berries are ripe, boy, those berries will disappear within a week. There are 4 different kinds of native wild coffees, and depending on where most of them need afternoon shade, of course, but if you can have space to have at least 3 of those different varieties, they flower and they berry over different periods of time in the summer or throughout the year. Another one, let me have a look. Corky stem passion vine. Let's talk about some larval host plants. Corky stem is a really important larval host plant for two of our important butterflies, the Gulf fritillary and the zebra longwing. Zebra longwing, of course, is our state butterfly, so it's great to have them around. And a fun fact about Corky stem is it is a great plant. If you can plant part of it in the sun and part of it in the shade, you will attract both the butterflies, because the zebra longwings will only lay in the shade and the Gulf fritillary will only lay in the sun. So that's a really fun little factor about that. That is also a very good plant to put with the firebush, whether it be compact or regular firebush, and let them coexist. This is what we call companion planting. And by planting those two together, you create a little ecosystem for the butterflies to lay their eggs on the corky stem, and for their adult, the butterflies, once they merge, to actually nectar on the firebush. So it's a really important little plant, and because it is a host plant for 2 of our butterflies. Another thing that a lot of people don't really realize looking at this list is our grasses. We have some skipper butterflies that actually use the grasses as a larval host plant, and I'm talking about the Fakahatchee grasses or the love grasses. They are really important because that is somewhere for some of the skippers to use, and also grasses are where butterflies hide, sometimes at night to sleep in. So that is just a very few of our native plants that are very important for habitat. And then on the next slide, I've got some pictures of the different ones. Now, let's go clockwise from the top picture. Right-hand top picture. That is the Flatwoods Plum. And actually my plum in my garden is flowering at the moment. So it's very early this year. This last winter, it actually flowered twice. It flowered in November and then it flowered again in January, February. Now they're very diminutive little flowers, but the insects love them, and hopefully it will produce fruit later on. Going down from that, we have the Simpson stopper, some of them that are ripe and some of them that are not. This year, my Simpson stopper actually produced berries twice. So that's kind of good because it gives the birds a nice amount of food for a long period. And then the next photo, of course, is the Simpson stopper flowers. They're very diminutive, but they are very, very incredible smell, and the insects, as I say, love them. And then going up to the top one is Yupon holly. And if anybody up there has a Yupon holly in their garden and it's a female, either weeping or upright, they should have berries, hopefully turning red by now, and then the birds will be very happy with you over the Christmas season. So that's just some of the flowers of some of the shrubs that you can use. Now, oh, here we are. This is actually, if you look up at the top left-hand corner, that is the corky stem passion flower. Now it has a very small little flower. It is pollinated by some of our small native wasps. The flower is small, but it packs quite a punch for the plant because of the leaves for the hosts. The berries there in the middle photo, that is a corky stem passion frine fruit. And the birds love them. You will definitely be feeding some very happy birds if you have those in your garden. And it produces quite a few berries, so that's a great thing. They are not very big. They're most probably the size of your pinky nail, maybe a little bit bigger, actually your pinky. Then the berries next to that is the Goldberry. Now, Goldberry is very area specific, but if you can get it to grow in your garden, it's a great shrub. It needs a little bit more moisture than what I have here in my garden up in the sandhills, so I don't grow it, but they are very good berries for the birds. So that is another one that's a great shrub to have. Firebush. We spoke about firebush a little earlier, but firebush is also, not only is it a great nectar source for birds, and for the hummingbirds and for the butterflies and bumblebees, it is also a good food source for the birds in the winter. As you can see on the top left-hand picture, the berries, once it's finished flowering, they actually start to turn to a fruit. And once they're black, the birds really enjoy them. And I've watched mockingbirds and cardinals alike eating them on my firebush. The middle one is a sparkleberry. Oh, sorry, not the middle one. The top right-hand corner is a sparkleberry. Sparkleberry is a great shrub as well, and it's kind of fun because it has different color berries that are different that ripen at different times. It is a member of the Vaccinium family, so it needs very acidic ground, and it likes a fair amount of organic mulch around the base of it to keep it happy. The middle photo is again Yapon hollyberries, which we've talked about before. The last flower is elderberry. Now, elderberry is a very important nectar source for our native bees, and also a great plant for us. You can collect the flowers and create an elderberry cordial. And if you collect the berries, you can make elderberry syrup. The birds, I never get a chance to eat any of our elderberry or make anything with our elderberry because the birds always beat me to it. So that is a very easy plant to grow. They say it needs a fair amount of moisture. It doesn't. It grows in my garden and it doesn't get that. So once it's established, they're pretty good. They do tend to sucker, so that's the only downside. You'd have to trim back the suckers. But that's just a few more of our shrubs. All of these shrubs are great for the birds as well because the birds can nest, or not necessarily nest, but they can hide in there. So let's see. We were talking about grasses earlier. That's one of my favorites for a tall upright grass is Fakahatchee grass, which is in the middle. That one has very fun little seed heads. And also as it starts to dry out, the birds like to eat the seeds. So it's a good food source for the birds. And again, the skipper butterflies, some of the skippers use that as their larval host. Love grasses, the love grasses have just finished flowering. And of course, that's a very important food source for some of the birds as well. It's also a nice short grass. So if you want something that's low growing and clumping, that's a great grass to use. And then the top left-hand corner, of course, is the elderberries that I never get to eat. Or should I say, I never get to use. Now, of course, we have quite a few fruiting trees here in Florida. I often get asked about people saying they want to create a food forest. This is just 4 of our plants down here that actually grow fine and they do produce fruit. The top left-hand corner is a pawpaw. And that one, that fruit is actually from the northern pawpaw, the triloba. It's not from our little native pawpaws down here. The scrub pawpaw is a much smaller fruit. I did actually try the pawpaw once, and I think it was slightly on the ripe side because it was a little strange tasting, very, very sweet. It tasted like bananas and pudding. So very weird combination. Below that is red mulberry. Those are delicious. And at Green Isles, we have a row of them where the squirrels in the winter, or in the summertime when they start to ripen, we can always tell when the mulberries were ripe because the squirrels will be sitting there devouring them with very fat, very fat cheeks and black fingers. The middle photo is the Chickasaw plum. Now we have 2 Florida plum trees that are native, the Chickasaw and the Flatwoods. The Chickasaw does produce more fruit than the Flatwoods. The downside with the Chickasaw, it is a thicket forming shrub, so it will create babies. The Flatwoods is more of a standalone. Unfortunately, the Flatwood, the fruit isn't as good as the Chickasaw. My Flatwoods, I never get to taste it because the birds always eat it anyway, which is why we grow them. Lastly, the little blueberry up in the top right-hand corner. That's a wonderful little shrub. They're low growing, slow growing. The fruit from them is absolutely delicious. I actually, out of the blueberries, the native ones, that is my favorite because it's very sweet. They are also, you know, if you don't have a very big garden and you want to grow some form of berries, blueberry will grow very well in a pot. The good thing about that, doing it that way, is you can actually control the acidity by making it more acidic because it's easier to add acidity to a smaller area. And they also need a fair amount of water to get established. So that way you can keep control of it a little bit easier. But it's fairly easy here in Florida to create some form of fruit in your garden. The mulberry, just FYI, and I'm sure Steve Turnipseed will be able to correlate with this, is don't plant a female anywhere near sidewalks or driveways or anything like that because you'll have black stains all over the ground. Needless to say, it is a delicious fruit, and I remember that growing up as a kid, always going out and eating mulberries. Another thing that people don't always think about, and which is very important, of course, is a water source. Here in Florida, even though we have a lot of water everywhere, it is very important to have water sources out for the birds at different levels. You don't want them, you know, just one in one level. I have about 5 different bird baths at different levels. I've even just used exactly like they've got the robin bathing in the top one, just a plastic container. Anything that you can give them somewhere to go and drink and bathe, because that is something that they really like to do. I've taken just the plant container, the plant saucer from a plant pot, and I put a rock in there and I put water on that. I have one of those on the ground. My bunny loves to visit it. The birds love to visit it. And it's a great, easy place for a lot of things to reach. Then I have taller ones in I have different leveled ones so that you have different kinds of birds and critters using them. I have a lizard that hangs out in one of mine near a tree, and he's always sitting on the edge of that, waiting to catch whatever insects come to drink. But it is really important to put water source out. And of course, bear in mind, if you have it in the full sun, that water gets hot. So try and have one in the sun possibly and one in the shade. And as I say, as many different water sources as you can put out. This is a very cool picture I found, and I thought, what a neat way to make a water station for birds or any critters. By having all the different layers, you're using by having the different layers, you've got different heights for different birds to use. And the cool thing with putting stones in there as well is it lets insects use them. If you don't have somewhere for the insects to stand on or the butterflies to stand on, it makes such a big difference. And I'm sure that's a very inexpensive way of creating a very effective watering station for your birds or any critters by that matter. And do you agree, Rodney? Yes. Nesting places. Of course, trees are very important for nesting. Lots of branches are always important for them to hide in. Nesting boxes can be added anywhere if you have a tree or even out on a post. It's really fun. This photo I found of these nesting boxes on a tree, it just shows who says you only have to have one on a tree. Another thing that a lot of people don't really think about and is very important, and I know a lot of areas that people can't have it is because of the falling hazard of falling on a house, is a snag tree. Snag trees are really important not only for birds, they're important for our insects as well, for squirrels, for owls and things like that. So it's kind of fun if you have somewhere or some place to keep a snag tree, or otherwise another way to get around it is to create a little pile of branches or small garden debris, because that's a great place for insects to live. And of course, we know what insects do, they feed the birds. Another thing, of course, well, another important thing, and we've already talked about one larval host, but you should always try and balance your ecosystem in your garden by having a balance of nectar plants and host plants. By having those host plants, you attract more birds and you attract more butterflies and more critters. Of course, milkweed, not everybody likes to eat the caterpillars because of the taste, because they are toxic. But milkweed is one that, you know, a lot of people know about, the monarch caterpillar and the plight of the monarch caterpillar. I always like to try and remind people it's not only the monarch caterpillar that needs a host plant, some of our other butterflies do too. You very rarely get to see the pretty pink flowers of the swamp milkweed because, of course, the caterpillars will devour the flowers first. The photo next to that, of course, is the Corky stem passion vine. And these are 2 of our butterflies. The one on top of the coneflower, the purple coneflower, that is our state butterfly, the zebra longwing butterfly. It's one of my favorites. I have a lot of Corky stem passion vine around my garden, and I see a lot of them, especially in my back garden. They're one of those butterflies, I think, that they are around all year round. So if we have mild weather in the wintertime, you are going to see them. So of course, it's important to have some form of nectar source in the winter as well for our butterflies as well as our birds, hummingbirds. The one on the left-hand side, that is a queen butterfly. And a fun fact, that is sea lavender. And apparently the sea lavender emits some form of a pheromone or a hormone or something like that, that attracts male queen butterflies. We don't know why. When I first saw them doing that, I thought it was the flowers on the sea lavender, but the sea lavender wasn't flowering. So after doing a little bit of research, apparently that is what actually attracts the butterflies to that. And the queen butterfly is one of there are only 2 other butterflies besides monarchs that will use milkweed. The queen butterfly is one of them. They are an interesting caterpillar. They have 1 extra set of antennae. So that is how you can tell the difference between a monarch and a queen. Are you having a conversation here too, Rodney? Of course, by adding any type of nectar plants, you're not only attracting the birds, you're also attracting pollinators. Black-eyed Susan, brown-eyed Susan, however you want to call them, Rudbeckia hirta. That is a really great plant for our pollinators. I have seen so many different native bees on that plant, and it's great to have them in the garden. They are one of those as well that if you put them in a hot, sunny area, they will reseed and keep going forever. Now, I know the next photo is not on a native, the red penta, but it is a great plant to attract nectar or butterflies. That is an eastern tiger swallowtail. That is one of our butterflies you'll see a lot around here. Let's see. So this is just a very simple quote that I actually love Doug Tellamy. When I first started designing, before I actually did my first design, Mark Gotts at Green Isles gave me one of Doug Tellamy's books, this one, Bringing Nature Home. And he said to me, I needed to read that before I did any designing to understand. That book brought tears to my eyes the first few pages. It blew my mind about how much natural land we are destroying here in America, actually worldwide. The scary thing is the amount of grass or turf that is being put everywhere. We are wasting so many precious resources by doing that, and by getting rid of all of our plants. Exactly what he says. Plants are a foundation of our entire system. Without them, there are no bugs, there are no bugs, there are no birds. Bringing Nature Home. If anybody wants to read a book that is really going to make you even more determined to plant natives, I'd highly recommend his books. And that's just another one of the hummingbird photographs. And these were actually taken by a client of mine. So he let me use them. So just a final couple of things. By creating a habitat in your garden, you will encourage wildlife to come and visit. If you have the right plants, they will stay and make your garden their home. I hope this has been informative. I hope you guys take something away from it. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them on behalf of myself and Mr. Squawk, Rodney here. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, Kirsten. That was excellent. So I will read some of the questions to you and then you can answer them.
Sure.
So the first question comes from Vicky, and she wants to know if Corky stem passion vine can be planted this time of year.
You can pretty well plant, you know, Florida is an interesting place because you can pretty well plant most of the year round. The only time I recommend not planting is if we have any imminent frosts coming, and you know, that's a hard one to say, but usually if we do have really cold weather, it's usually, from my experience, the last few years, and I've only been here for 6 years, well, actually this winter is my 6th year, it's usually February, March time. So as long as you're planting it now and it's got a little while, I don't think that should be a problem.
Oh, that is good. I do know that since I've been in Florida, I have planted probably every month of the year, but like you say, depending on what's happening with the weather.
Yeah, that's the main thing, is just to keep in mind, you know, if we're going to have cool weather next week, I think we're getting down into the 40s one night. So, you know, as long as it's, you know, Florida, the ground doesn't freeze. It's not like up north where you have inches of freeze going into the ground. Here we get more of an air frost if we have any cold, and that can do more, you know, damage to the plants out in the open, but it won't actually damage the roots.
Huh. Well, and Vicky also wants to know, when do we see hummingbirds in Central Florida?
So you will usually, most of the time when I see them in my garden, I see them in the early morning or the later afternoon. It's very rare you see them in the heat of the day. They're usually hiding by that time. I at the nursery, I've seen them there at other times because there is a lot of food for them there. But if you plant tropical sage, coral honeysuckle, firebush, and never plant them in one spot. This is something that I've always said to people: plant them around the garden, because what you want to do is you want to draw the birds around. You don't want to centralize it in one spot, because they'll come and then they're gone. By having that around different areas of the garden, it pulls them around the garden. And that's what happens with my hummingbirds. When they come, they literally go around the whole garden. And I've only ever seen 2 hummingbirds in my garden at one time. And of course, I'm not here all the time, but that's the only, and I think it was a male and a female. But those are the plants you need to plant to be able to attract hummingbirds.
And do some hummingbirds migrate through Florida? Isn't that right?
I have heard that. I know those photos are of the rufous one, which I think is unusual for Florida. Normally, we have the ruby-throated, and they're usually, I think most of them migrate in the wintertime, but I haven't seen any hummingbirds for a while, so they may very well be gone. But the rufous ones, if they're coming, they migrate from, I think, California out that way. Sometimes they come down here.
And then Jo has a comment, and she said that the mockingbirds love her Yaupan holly and the Simpson stopper berries. And I can say that's true in my yard as well.
They sure do. And one plant that I didn't mention, and I have found over the years that this one is a really important food source and nectar source, and that is button sage or wild sage, Lantana involucrata. It is a shrub that the birds also love, and I've watched birds doing crazy things underneath that, trying to get to the berries. So that's another one that will be really good for wildlife in the garden.
And it's called button sage?
Button sage, yes. It's a type of Lantana involucrata.
Okay.
And it's a very, very cool shrub. And actually, I should really put one of those in this PowerPoint, because it is a really good one for birds and pollinators.
Oh, and then another thing that Jo says, this is actually true of my yard as well, is the tropical sage plants that I have, they attract finches, just like,
yes.
The finches love those plants. And also I'm seeing a lot of house wrens as well that seem to be eating, they eat the beauty berries and the seeds from the tropical sage.
I've actually even heard of people saying that they have seen, and I can't remember whether it was a finch or which bird it was, that they actually bite the flowers off the tropical sage too. So it is a really important plant, not only a nectar source, but also a food source for the birds. So that's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. Fun. And then Susan said she has a button sage plant, and the mockingbirds love that. Yep, I have to say the mockingbirds pretty much love everything in my yard. They can kind of be bullies sometimes, but it depends. Sometimes they're nice and they let the other birds have some of the food.
Mockingbirds, they are an interesting bunch. I have a pair that live in my front garden, and when my Florida privet is burying out, boy, she guards that privet like you will not believe. It's really funny. But hey, that's why I plant the stuff for the birds.
Exactly. So another thing that we forgot to mention in the beginning is that we are looking for new officers to run the club for the new year. So if you are interested for being an officer in 2021, you can send an email to fnpsthevillages@gmail.com. And we actually have, any of the emails that you've received from the club, you can reply to that. And also the free coffee and firebush plants, the email is at the very top of the chat session. So you can scroll up there and see that email. And apparently Molly's got lots of those 2 plants. But at this point, I am not seeing any other questions. But one thing I would like for you to do, Kirsten, is to I talked a little bit about your business, but I didn't really go into depth of it. So could you go into depth about your business?
Oh, totally. So Mark and I have been talking about this for a while. Mark got Green Isle Gardens. And, you know, I've been working there for, like I say, just under 5 years. And I felt it was time for me to start going out on my own. Victor, my husband, and I, we have, you know, over the pandemic, this is something that has made a lot of people rethink a lot of things. And the pandemic kind of helped me realize that, you know, I know how much of a problem maintenance is with regards to natives, because natives are not good for a mow and blow company to maintain. They don't understand how they work. And the pandemic made us realize that, you know, people need help. And native gardens and native plants are my passion. I went to the Green Isles and did my internship there and didn't leave until now. And I've learned that by just doing the little things that we do, we make a difference. And that is our philosophy with My Dragonfly Gardens. We want to help people, we want to educate, and we want to be able to give people a sustainable garden that will bring the critters into the garden and, you know, encourage them to stay. If you have any questions, we have a very good website, mydragonflygardens.com, super easy to remember. I still do the same services, consultation. So if anybody would like consultation, I do that. And for the month of December and January, well, the next 2 months of December and January, we are offering a 10% discount on the design or consultation fees. So usually my design fee is, consultation fee, sorry, is $95 for a 2-hour appointment. So we are offering 10% off that. And also the design, I'm offering 10% off the price of those. And those fees start usually from $550 for a you know, regular size property. So if anybody has any questions or has, you know, would like to know anything, then feel free to reach out and I will definitely see if I can answer their questions.
Well, thank you very much. That was very informative. I may take you up on some of your maintenance services at some point. Right now, I'm able to do it because you know, we've been kind of shut down with COVID, so I've been spending more time out there.
I think a lot of people have.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and give us a presentation, and hope you have a nice holiday season.
Thank you.
And I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, I wish everybody the best as well. And you know, if 2020 hasn't taught us anything, it should have taught us to take care of our planet, because it's the only one we have, and to start being a little bit more aware of what we put in our gardens and how we look after the planet. And hopefully this will make people more aware of it and want to plant more natives and take care of everything more. So I wish you all the very best.
Oh, thank you, Kirsten. And you have a nice rest of your holiday season.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thanks to everybody for watching. Bye-bye.
And you've been getting a lot of great job, Kirsten, messages as well.
Oh, thank you. And Rodney was helping.
Yes, he was. He's very cute. So.
He's very nosy. He doesn't think he's a bird. He thinks he's a person.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. And remember, everybody, no meeting in December.